by looking into your website and reading through everything you had on there, and working with the monogram idea that you presented, and the two elements, and it really, really strongly reminded me of something I hadn't seen before, so I started digging around, and it's a Torii Japanese shrine gate. That's what I immediately went to, and actually, if you compare it to the logo you already have on your website, it's very similar to that. Now, from the brief that you gave us, you said that you wanted to kind of steer clear of the Oriental aspect of it. So I played around with it a bit more, and then I left it a bit more, and kind of thought, okay, where can I take it if we're not taking it in that direction? So, these are kind of initial plays that I had. Again, mostly using Georgia. I went to the Oxford University website and I found the Pantone colour for Oxford Blue. And I started mixing it up. So you can see kind of quite a lot of the playing is to do with creating this monogram. So it's very much based on the ethos of the monogram you had originally, the joining of the T, the H and the T. And like the boys have done already and demonstrated, but using Georgia. And actually it does look quite nice. It goes together really nicely with the ligatures. With the THT, I googled it, and actually the first thing that comes up, incidentally, is the Terence Higgins Trust, which I hadn't realised. And actually some of the stuff I'd started doing looks like the Terence Higgins Trust logo, so I don't know whether that might be an issue or just something worth bearing in mind. And then it started to get a bit kind of blue placky. I don't know whether that's something you're interested in. Again, that's something we can talk about. And I also came up with a vector of a mug and started to go down that route, but then it became quite contemporary. So then I kind of went back to the drawing board a little bit, and I started to think, okay, where does the Tea House Theatre fit in Vauxhall? So since we started here, well, I started in January, but these guys have been here since September. Obviously, we visit most of the cafes in Vauxhall, as you can imagine. So, you know, they range from places like Porter's, which is our kind of local sandwich bar, which is very rough and ready, teas, bacon wraps, all that kind of thing. And then you also have places like Pret and Starbucks. Then at the other end of the scale, you have Brunswick House. You guys have probably been there already, which is within the gorgeous environment. It is the Brunswick House kind of architectural salvage place, and it's really interesting. And in turn, actually, what's really interesting is they are getting a lot of their stuff that they're selling from places like Madeira, which is in the lower left-hand corner, the Portuguese bakery, which is around the corner from here. So they're all quite interconnected. Yeah, the little Portuguese nibbly type things. And then also looking at places like the Royal Vauxhall Tavern as somewhere that's already providing theatre or a certain kind of theatre. And just kind of thinking, okay, well, where are these guys going to fit in? What is it that they can do that would be really unique? And I basically, at that point, started to really research the Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens. So I thought, okay, well, these guys are... You didn't mention it in your presentation.
It's one of the main things we're looking at again.
Of course you are, because you're right bang in the middle of it. You're the only place that is. And there isn't anywhere in Vauxhall that references it, that talks about it, that does anything to do with it. And I think that's a massive shame. I think that could be potentially the basis of your identity, and it fits really well. And I think with the redevelopment of the park that's already happening now, I think it's going to become more and more important. So
yes, I think that's one of the main reasons why the banks are giving us money.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
So obviously you probably know the basics, but it ran from the 1660s to 1859. You know, Mozart played there, Chopin played there, the Duchess of Devonshire got her rocks off there. It's brilliant.
Blake got his syphilis there.
Yeah, marvellous. So that kind of made me go back to the drawing board, and then I started to work on something a little bit more, okay, fitting in with the Edwardian arts and crafts of the building and the Queen Anne architecture of your pub, your cafe, and also something that maybe would fit in a bit more closer to the time then, and what you could do with that. So I came up with a new monogram based on a font called Bertham, which is just a bit more ornamental, and also started playing around with the idea of explicitly saying what it was. Instead of using the THT, maybe thinking, okay, well, maybe THT doesn't mean very much to people. Maybe you need to say, you know, it's the Tea House Theatre, you know, or maybe it's the Tea House and Theatre. Maybe it's THT, Tea House Theatre. You know, what kind of combinations? Do you want to bring in the idea of it being in Vauxhall or being in the Vauxhall Gardens? And out of all of these different things, I kind of like... Are you familiar with Leon? Probably are. The chain of kind of cafe, restaurant, quite bright kind of Mexicana. But what they do, which is really interesting with their brand, is they don't just stick to a Starbucks thing, so they have the same logo and the same typeface on absolutely everything. They have the basic kind of language that they use, and then they spread it over lots of different devices, so everything you buy has a different sticker on it. It's very eclectic. It works really well because it all ties in, but it's not afraid to kind of go a little bit crazy with its branding. So all of these different things, I kind of liked exploring lots of different ones instead of just one, which gets me to my kind of final page, which is sort of a summary for you guys of my thoughts. So actually, personally, the one I really ended up liking was the idea of the Vauxhall Gardens Tea House and Theatre. So you're splitting it into its component parts. So I'll run through what I've put down at the side because it's quite text heavy. So obviously the logo is important. It's important to you. It was important in your initial brief. And I've written the thing about the Terence Higgins Trust because I think that might be important. The website, as it is currently, is a really good back catalogue of your brand and of your theatre company, but a lot of it doesn't seem to fit with what you were telling me about what you were trying to create with the cafe.
No,
so I wanted to ask you guys how you were going to kind of combine the two and reconcile that. I mean,
we're going to wipe out the front page, basically.
Right.
The theatre company is going to go back to being Holdfast,
yeah,
which I don't know if you saw was one of the tabs at the
Yeah.
top, and therefore Tea House Theatre is going to go white and blue,
yeah.
and we're going to redo the whole.
I think that's really good. I think the separating, because obviously you guys are going to be, you're going to be playing there, but I think the separation is important. I think even in the name, the idea of the Tea House Theatre, it would be a shame if anybody thought it was just a theatre, you know, or just a tea house equally. What else have I got here? Who are your target audience? Brief specifies women with children, secondarily everyone else in Vauxhall. And I've said, is that the correct way around? Who will be around at different times of the day around this work? And actually, we had a mentor talking to us about what Alex and John were saying about bringing your own lunch, almost like corkage. And I'd never heard of that before. I think it's a brilliant idea. You know, the idea they pay for tea or they pay for pudding and you let them eat the sandwiches now and have them eating it. And certainly in the Black Dog, I mean, we've been chased like the Black Dog a fair few times, like it's lunchtime, you know, bugger off. And then again, how does the Tea House Theatre fit into Vauxhall? What unique services it supply? So I said I propose creating your identity, a venue steeped in tea and in the history of the park, the theatre, refreshment, art and the spirit of Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens reflected in the Tea House Theatre, a piece of history not widely known about. Make your identity from theatre. Because initially I started looking at references like model theatres, looking at Pollux and things like that, and maybe how that could work. And it links again back into the pleasure gardens. Decorate with the immediate history of the gardens, become the home of images and stories from that period, potentially use little characters within your branding, so you have a main kind of a logo, but then maybe throughout your sugar cubes and your teacups and your plates or your pieces of paper, you have these little kind of theatrical characters, potentially, might be taking it a bit far. Reaching out into the local community, educating and entertaining, bringing back the pleasure gardens, and becoming a hub for creativity, setting up a cafe which does more, bring your own lunch, Wi-Fi, big tables, perfect for meetings and working. Cooper mentioned something really interesting about affiliating with the sports facilities, kind of almost becoming an unofficial kind of après sport place you can unwind after that. The tea house is in the centre of a park under long-term development in an area unique in London, a place in constant flux. It needs to engage fully with this. And then thinking about Kate Mills's wedding, I pulled a quote from one of the sites I was researching on the Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens, and I was thinking you could recreate ideas from the history of the gardens. So the particular one is the Vauxhall Supper, and it just says, during supper, one of the great special effects of Vauxhall was enacted. As night fell, a whistle was blown as a signal to a number of servants placed in strategic parts of the garden. Each servant touched a match to pre-installed fuses, and in an instant, over 1,000 oil lamps were illuminated, bathing the gardens in a warm light that would have been visible for miles around. In the days before electric light, the effect was sensational and was a constant attraction of the gardens.
Wow.
There's so much stuff like that in the history of the gardens, and if you could begin to recreate bits of it, I think that could be real magic.
Yeah, one of them is the Vauxhall ham.
Yes, sliced so thin that you can
Yes,
see.
yes. We've already started prepping we would do
House.
Vauxhall hand bands and things like that. But yes, the lights, I forgot about the lights.
The lights and the idea of having a kind of a street party, perhaps if you were to have like a dusk street party, it could be really amazing. I'm sure you guys will do something really interesting with it. I've put a couple of links, which I'm sure you're aware of, Vauxhall Gardens and the Friends of Vauxhall Gardens at the bottom there. And that is the end of my presentation. Sorry, I never do. You have it.
Yeah, watch out, Musk. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Daniel.
Oh, not yet, it's not.
I started. I came from a different view. I looked at what you were saying, and I just what you were saying about theatre and action, and it was just reminding me of all the British eccentricities, high tea, everything. Oh, yeah, high tea. Just the way, I found the clip.
Yes, I know it very well.
Yes. So I was going to play that, but it's kind of not loaded. So from that, I got great insight. It was like, I'm not trying to do something different, I'm trying to do the same thing in a different way, which is, you're not trying to be that cat that's in Women Out and Out. You're a theatre, and like everything on your website is about these eccentricities. These are what make you unique. People, like, you're not, like, the people are going to want to... Yes, it's an eccentricity, and that's your big selling point, is the fact that it's a theatre and a cat. So, do you know what I mean? It's like, the way you come across is, these are two great English traditions, and you're bringing them together, and you're merging them to create this fantastic new thing. Because if I wanted tea, if I wanted to do high tea, I go to Dorchester, or I go to the Ritz.